So it's early July today, and I am back on this property that has been a project here for the last couple of years where we've planted a lot of miscanthus grass and switchgrass, and thought I'd come out here and do a quick little update and just kind of show you what we're doing a little bit different this year than what we did last year. So here I'm standing in front of the blind, which is on the north side of this big field here. This big field's about 10 acres, and we've really split this thing up. What we have here is we've got this long line of miscanthus grass that runs along the north border about 250 yards, and then as you get all the way to the end, you hit the road, and then it goes another 250 yards along the road. I'll show you that separately in a different video, but what we have here is I wanted to show you what we got on our corn. And this year what we're doing is we're not creating a big block of corn. What we wanted to do was really create more green food and then just separate it with some strips of corn. So we've got 17 strips of corn in this field here, and we've got 3 rows of corn in every strip. Now we got long strips, and then you can see in the distance we got some short strips. So they alternate, a long strip, a short strip, and the reason why is because the field pans out. So it's like a baseball diamond, you might want to say, and I'm standing basically like at home plate. I think one thing that we're going to do different next year though is I think we're going to decrease the number of dividing strips from 17 probably down to about 8 or 9, because the gaps that we have here on the near end by the blind is a little bit too narrow for the tractor, and it's just kind of a pain. So the way we planted this corn was with a Genesis drill. And if you remember from last year, we were not very impressed on planting corn with a Genesis 5 drill. It's a great piece of machinery. It's very heavy duty. Does a great job on everything except corn. It's just a little bit too inconsistent when it comes to putting corn down in rows. So I'll kind of show you right here. What we have is we've got a spot here where we've got 2 close together, and then we got nothing. Then we have 3. Then we have a big gap, then we have 2, and then they're spaced out pretty good, and then we got another gap. You know, and if you look over here on the other side, we've got a big gap here. Then you got 5 basically right there. You've got a big gap, and then you got a clump again. And so it's just very inconsistent. And then what happens is you've got these openings in these screens, and we really don't want that, right? So we want to have a consistent screen to separate these deer from each other. Now, one thing that we did is kind of a last-minute decision. We decided to use 2 of these strips and plant a grain sorghum instead. And this grain sorghum is also known as milo. So you have milo and grain sorghum, which is basically the same thing. It's got the big grain head on top when it matures, and the deer really like it. Then you also have a forage sorghum, and is more for, you know, just foraging for cattle and whatnot. And then you have a third kind, which is a cross between sorghum and Sudan grass. So they call it sorghum Sudan. And that grows a lot taller and does not really have the big seed head on it like milo does. And then the fourth kind is the type that John Comp at Northwood sells, and that's that HD screen, where it's a lot thicker, it's a lot more stout, it gets really, really tall, and it really stands up very, very well in high winds and heavy snow. So, but this type that we have here is what we call milo, and this is the shortest version of sorghum out there. So this is going to top out at about 5 to 6 feet. So it was kind of a last-minute decision to plant sorghum in a couple of these strips, and we just really wanted to test it out. You know, not everybody has a drill or a corn planter to plant corn, so sorghum or milo is a lot easier to plant. I mean, you can just broadcast it, and we really wanted to tell or see how tall this stuff was going to get. You know, when we're breaking up plots like this and we're just trying to screen deer from each other and make these bucks come out and search with their legs, you know, this stuff doesn't have to be 12, 14 feet like an HD screen. It doesn't even really have to be 9 or 10 feet like corn does. So if we can just get, you know, 5 to 6 feet out of it, that'll screen deer from each other, and that'll really break up this plot so that, you know, these deer can't see each other, and I feel that we'll be able to have a lot more deer out here at the same time, and it'll force some of these bucks to have to search with their legs. So as you can see, we have the sorghum here over on the left. Then we got another row of corn. And another reason why we wanted to try and plant sorghum, see if it would work, is because you can see here, the deer have really eaten that when it was small. And a lot of these corn stalks are pretty stunted. You can see right here as well, they nip that off. They nip this off here as well. And the nice thing about sorghum, here's the second row of it right here. The nice thing about sorghum is the fact that the deer will not eat it when it comes out of the ground. They won't even eat it until it gets mature, and that's when they hit those big grain heads. So it's a great late season attraction for deer. And from the looks of it, I think it's doing quite well. I mean, all we did to plant this, kind of a last minute deal, was we just came in here with a rototiller and just rototilled a strip. But just before that, I threw down some 4600 urea. So that got tilled in at the same time. And after it was tilled, then I came back with the milo, just broadcasted it with a little hand spreader. And then unfortunately, we didn't have our harrow here at this location at the time. So it was somewhere else on the other side of the state. And I just grabbed a pallet and I dragged a pallet over top of that seed just to get it underneath the dirt a little bit. And seemed to work quite well. And going downhill, it looks like we got a little bit more seed here than what we bargained for. But you can see, I mean, this stuff really is pretty thick. You know, it's got a nice heavy-duty base on it. And it looks a lot like corn, except it's not going to get any ears on it. So I'm really happy with it so far. And if you look at it, you know, this is going to be a lot more dense than the corn screen over here, where, you know, the drill kind of missed a bunch of spots here. And you can see here where the deer have really eaten that pretty fast when it came out of the ground. You know, last year we had the same problem, but we still had ears of corn that came up on some of these stalks that they had nibbled on. So the idea then is deer are going to come out of this swamp over here, which is, I mean, you can see how big that area is over there. It's just massive. So there's a creek running right through there. There's a lot of tamaracks, little high spots out there that they can bed. It's just a massive bedding area. So as the mature bucks come out of that swamp, they hit that little kill plot that I sprayed IMOX on a while back. Then they come up the hill, come into this field, and then this over here, first thing they're going to hit is clover and chicory. So this will be a year-round food source, which we did not have on this property until, you know, last year when we planted it. So got a lot of good clover and chicory coming up. This is John Seclusion's 360. I just sprayed this last week, and looks like a lot of these plants are dying. Some of this grass, like this right here, that's you can tell it's wilting pretty good. So IMOX takes a while to kill weeds and grasses, but the stuff will die, and this ought to be really, really lush by this fall. So then as the deer come out of the swamp, they get up into this clover, then they're going to encounter all these strips of corn and sorghum or milo, and they literally will not be able to see 2 to 3 rows over. It's going to be something where they're going to have to walk through. And, you know, doe family groups over there can't see doe family groups over here, and vice versa. And the total size of these corn strips comes out to about 4 acres. So then in between the strips, probably later next month, in August, about mid-August, I'll come in here and I'll spray this with Roundup. And then we'll just go ahead and drill our favorite 5-way blend right into these strips here. So we'll have green food between screens of corn and milo. So if you're curious as to how this is going to turn out and how well it really screens deer from each other, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I'll be coming back out here a couple, 2-3 times later this year and showing you guys what this looks like. And, you know, hey, if it really works well, you know, man, planting milo as a screen to break up your food plots might be a really good option instead of trying to separate your food plots with switchgrass. So if we really like the way this turns out, then what we're going to do next year is we'll plant the milo again, but we're going to plant it right in between the 2 strips where we got the green food this year. So that way, you know, we're not trying to plant milo in the same strip, because it's just like corn where you have to rotate it with something else. So every year we can just go back and forth and just keep rotating this milo back and forth. Now, the one advantage of planting corn for a screen is that, you know, corn's Roundup ready. So you can go ahead and spray Roundup on it after it pops out of the ground. But sorghum is not Roundup ready. And so the only option you have after it emerges out of the ground is to spray it with a 2,4-D or a Butarac, something like that, because that won't kill grasses. And sorghum and milo and corn, it's all a grass, right? So you can see in between these strips right now, we got a lot of crimson in here, and you don't see the little white markings on there because this is crimson clover, and you can see the old crimson head, and this is what it looks like when it turns to seed. And these are really, really good at reseeding themselves. And we see deer in here almost every night between these corn strips, and they're just hammering this crimson clover. So the other advantage of planting these strips like this is going to help screen these deer from the road. So, you know, we got the road right over there, and, you know, the miscanthus isn't quite tall enough yet. This is probably going to top out at about, I'm going to say maybe 9 feet, maybe 10 feet this year. We still have the switchgrass that's coming up. You know, that hasn't reached its full potential yet. So these corn and milo strips are actually going to help screen these deer from that road, and I feel it'll probably motivate these deer to come out a little bit sooner before it gets totally dark out. So now I'm at the far end of the strips. We got the blind all the way down at the other side, and you can see we're at the end of these corn strips over here. And we got this little area here that drops down toward the woods. And because this is kind of down low and we can't see the deer as they come out of the woods, we can't see them until they get basically between the corn strips. So what we're going to do then is we killed out all the clover here, and we went ahead and we drilled switchgrass. So we really don't want deer feeding down here in the clover. So we just want to take the food away, and then that way, if the deer want to come up into the food, they're going to have to expose themselves to the blind, because when they're down in this area here, and we start getting down a little bit lower, that blind disappears, and so will the deer. So anyway, that was a game plan on that. But the outer edge of all these corn strips is what we call the warning track, you know, just like it's a baseball field. So we've got this strip right here. This is going to be in clover, chicory, and that's going to wrap all the way around to the far strip over there. And then it's going to come this way, and it'll wrap all the way around the other end. And we call that the warning track. So in between here, this is all going to be food that we're going to drill with our 5-way blend in August. And so, like I said, I'll just come in here like a day before. I'll spray all the weeds, and then we'll go ahead and drill in our fall food plot. And by then, that corn ought to be probably around 7 feet tall, something like that. Some of them will be. Last year, you know, was the first year we tried to plant corn, and we did have quite a few ears on there. But the problem is we had to plant it so late because we didn't have any rain in May and June last year, if you remember. And we didn't plant corn until the first day of summer, June 21. So we were way behind, and we planted 100-day corn. And by Christmas and New Year's, they still hadn't started eating that corn yet. I don't think it had dried down yet. But when we came back in March, every single ear was cleaned up. So hopefully it's going to be a lot better this year as far as palatability, because we planted it over a month earlier, and we planted a shorter day corn, like an 85-day corn. So here I'm on the far end of the corn strips again. And as you can see, this corn right here is actually not doing too bad. And probably because it's closest to the road, right? So the deer didn't really hit it and nip it off like they did the corn closer to the swamp. So yeah, if you look at this, I mean, you're looking at head high already. And check this out. We got it tasseling out already. So corn right here is looking really, really well. So in about another month or so, I'll come back out here and I'll give you guys another update and kind of walk through these strips of corn and milo and see how tall they are, see how the weeds are doing. And we'll probably do an update also on the miscanthus and the switchgrass stand. And if you want to see those and see the progress, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video.